Before the world knew her name, before the books, the films, the fortune, Joanne Rowling was broke, depressed, and completely alone. She was a single mother, newly divorced, carrying her baby through the streets of Edinburgh with nowhere to go and a storm inside her heart. She felt like a failure. She had no job, no money, and no future. But in the middle of that darkness, a spark, a boy, a train, a school of magic. An idea struck her on a delayed train ride, and it wouldn't let go. She didn't know it yet, but that spark would grow into the most beloved story of a generation. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. It's where the magic begins. Before the fame, before the movies, there was a quiet little girl who loved books more than anything. Joanne would hide under her covers late at night, flashlight in hand, turning pages long after bedtime. Home wasn't always safe. Reality was hard. But inside the pages of fantasy, she found comfort, escape, and possibility. She dreamed of dragons, castles, and invisible worlds. Her imagination was her superpower. While other kids played outside, Joanne lived in her stories, writing them, drawing them, breathing them. Even as life around her grew darker, her inner world became brighter. Long before the world knew her name, her stories had already saved her. Life doesn't always follow the path we imagine. For Joanne, everything fell apart at once. Her mother, the person she loved most, passed away after a long illness. Joanne never got to share her magical story with her. Grief overwhelmed her, but she tried to move forward. She married, hoping to start a new chapter, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. The marriage ended in abuse, fear, and a rushed escape with her baby daughter in her arms. She returned to the UK with nothing. No job, no savings, no home. Just a suitcase, a stroller, and a broken heart. She was officially a single mother, living on government support, battling deep depression. At times she felt she had failed. As a writer, as a mother, as a person. She said later that she was as poor as it's possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. Doctors diagnosed her with clinical depression. She even considered ending her life. But something stopped her. Her daughter. That tiny spark of life gave her a reason to stay. Joanne picked up her pen again. She wasn't writing for fame. She wasn't chasing a dream anymore. She was writing to survive. And slowly, painfully, with no money, no job, and no computer, Joanne began writing her story by hand, in notebooks, during her daughter's naps. She couldn't afford childcare, so she'd walk for miles through Edinburgh just to find a warm cafe where she could sit and write. Sometimes she bought a single cup of coffee and stayed for hours. In those cafes, surrounded by noise and strangers, she created magic. She didn't have a publisher, she didn't have connections, but she had an idea. A boy who didn't know he was a wizard, a magical school, a world hidden just beneath our own. She didn't plan to change the world. She was simply holding on to a story that gave her hope. When her daughter cried, she'd stop writing and rock her to sleep. When the cafe got crowded, she'd pack up and come back the next day, word by word, line by line. She kept going, not because she thought it would become famous, but because she had to. Writing became her lifeline. In her own words, I was the freest I had ever been because my greatest fear had already happened, and I was still alive. And with that freedom, the world of Harry Potter truly came to life. Joanne finished her book and believed it was time to share her story with the world. She carefully typed the first chapters, printed them out, and sent them to publishers. And then, rejection. One by one, they said no. 12 times, she later recalled. Each one felt like a door closing. Some publishers said it was too long. Others said fantasy wouldn't sell. A few never even replied. She felt crushed, invisible, unheard. Was Harry Potter only real to her? But something inside her refused to give up. She believed in her story. She believed in the magic. So she sent it one more time to a small publisher called Bloomsbury. That final act of hope would change her life forever. It happened quietly. No headlines, no red carpets. Just a letter from a small publisher named Bloomsbury. They liked her story. They wanted to publish it. They offered her £2,500 for the first print run of a children's book by a single mom no one had heard of. Joanne was stunned. Not because it was a fortune, it wasn't, but because someone finally said yes. Bloomsbury printed just 500 copies of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, most of them sent to libraries, and one little decision to publish an unknown author's story would go on to change the world. Joanne didn't become famous overnight, but for the first time, she had proof. The magic she believed in was real. It had begun. First, no one noticed. Just 500 copies of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone were printed, many of them sent to libraries. But then, something magical happened. Kids started reading, then rereading, and telling their friends. Word spread like wildfire, in schools and book clubs, in whispers passed between pages. Children who had never finished a book before couldn't put this one down. It wasn't just a story, it was a world they wanted to live in. Soon, bookstores couldn't keep copies on shelves. The second book came, then the third, and the momentum exploded. Joanne, once a struggling single mother, became a household name. She was invited to interviews, award shows, and eventually, Hollywood. The film rights were sold. A movie was made. Then another, and another. Suddenly, her characters were on the big screen, her books in every language, her name known around the globe. But what mattered most to Joanne wasn't the fame or fortune. It was the letters from children, parents, teachers, saying, "Thank you. This book made my child love reading." Harry Potter had become a legend, and the woman behind the magic had changed the world. She started with nothing. No money, no support, no reason to believe. But through heartbreak, poverty, and rejection, she kept writing. Her story brought magic to millions and hope to those who needed it most. From depression to billions, from a quiet cafe to global fame. J.K. Rowling proved that one story, and the courage to tell it, can change the world. J.K. Rowling didn't set out to become a legend. She simply refused to quit. From writing in cafes with a sleeping baby, to facing rejection after rejection, to watching her world come alive in the hands of millions. Her story is one of quiet courage, relentless hope, and the power of imagination. She didn't have wealth, fame, or privilege, just a pen, a story, and the belief that it mattered. And that made all the difference. Today, Harry Potter is more than a book. It's a global phenomenon. And Joanne Rowling, she's proof that you don't have to start with everything to create something that changes everything. Because sometimes the greatest heroes come from the darkest places.